Alright guys, this is another episode of Inside the Mind of Zykoma. This is episode 9, and this time we're going to be focusing on how to clutch up in intense situations. So we're just going to be talking about that. Mostly it's going to be in the end game, because that's when usually the adrenaline's running high and things are just really tense, because a lot of running on the line. You really want that victory royale, and you just want to finish the game strong, right? So this is actually going to be a different type of episode, just because we're focusing on duos here. Okay, this is an Atlantis scrim. It's an alpha lobby, really stacked scrim. Basically every single person in this lobby is a scrimmer. Like, it's basically a custom. There are 50 teams of 2 people each, which is why you see 200 people, or 100 people here rather. And we're just basically going to be focusing on what we do as a duo to come out on top. And in the end game, you'll be seeing me focus on how I end up clutching the game. The situation ends up being that my partner dies. Like, sometimes it just happens to be the case that, you know, your partner dies and you're left alone, or the other way around, right? The point is, you still got to try your best to win that game, because there is a possibility that you win the game if you play everything correctly. In duos, we still land Dusty. You see me looking around here because I want the information on other people. I want to see if we're uncontested, or is there people landing with us, right? Because that's super important information. If I continue to look around, I can actually see where they land, right? So I can make plays based off that information. So I sort of had the idea that that guy's landing at this tower to my left. I just want to be, you know, keeping that in mind and making plays based off of that information. So I'm just looting here. I'm listening for calls from my partner, because as soon as he makes a call that he's in trouble or he needs help or he's fighting, I need to just run over and forget what I'm doing. Just run over and help him, right? That's the biggest priority. Right now he's not making any calls that he sees anyone. So we end up seeing this person right here that runs into this building, right? We know that. I convey that to my partner and we take height, right? Knowing the area is super good, we understand that playing top mid here on this roof is super good. Because it's really tough for your opponent to shoot down natural buildings, because there's a lot of support for this big building. It's impossible to shoot down. You have to build up to us. It's basically high ground, but you can't counter it by shooting it down like you usually would with player built structures, right? So we understand that. We know the players in that area. We sort of have them choked. We still try to loot while keeping them choked in that area, right? We want to do that because we're basically getting stronger while they're being stuck back there, basically accomplishing nothing, right? We don't take the fight right away to them, right? We just want to get our situation a lot better if it's possible to do so. They're over there. See, I make the call out, I ping, right? You see that I ping, right? Because I say that they're over there, right? But that's not enough info for my partner. So, but the ping tells them which direction they're in. That ping alone lets my partner know which direction they're in. So again, I'm playing the roof because I don't want to get shot down. And we sort of take them on at 2 different angles here. So it's super hard for them to defend at both angles. My partner pushes them, and I come in from the back, right? 2 different angles. Again, it's super hard for them to defend if we time the push correctly. If my partner goes in and I'm really behind, then my partner takes a 1v2 and he dies. That's really tough. I just want to focus on that fact, because the timing of your entrance of both of you is super important if you're going to split up and come at 2 different angles. You can't leave your partner alone, because one of you guys is going to be the threat, right? The direct threat that they're both going to face towards, and then the other guy is going to do the most of the damage. In this case, since we got them so low, they both faced my partner and tried to fight him, but he was able to clean it up before I got there, so that's really good on his part. But yeah, so at this point, we clear our area, right? Now we know for a fact that no one's here. How do we know that no one's up at Diner, right? How do we have that information already? Because when we were gliding, we didn't see anyone glide there, right? See how that information that we collected a minute and a half ago actually helps us now. We know Diner is not looted at all. So we know that we can take our time, take shrooms, or if we can, we're already full HP, but that's beside the point. Like, if we weren't, we know we have the time to take shrooms, right? Because there's no threat up at Diner. We also know we can go up to Diner and farm there as well, and loot that as well. So that's really good. It doesn't have to help you directly in the moment, but it may help you down the road. I'm just going to speed ahead here, because all we do essentially is mat up to 500. Right, loot the rest, take shrooms if we have to. In this game, we don't have to, but in some games we do, right? That's just our routine. So I'm just gonna speed ahead a little bit. Also, in Season 8, there's a new vending machine at Dusty Divot, right? We understand that, and since we know that we're alone, right, we can take advantage of the vending machine. There's a reason why this vending machine at Dusty Diner is actually stronger than any other vending machine in the game. Because Dusty is dead center of the map. You're guaranteed to get first zone. right? Getting zone with the vending machine next to you from where you land is actually super advantageous because it gives you a lot of time to farm those extra mats you need to buy whatever you need to buy from the vending machine. The thing about, landing Snobby Shores, if there was a vending machine, I'm not actually sure if there is a vending machine there. Let's assume there's a vending machine at Snobby Shores, right? And then your first circle ends up all the way on the right side of the map. Let's draw this a little bit, right? So suppose this screen is the map, right? Snobby Shores is here, right? On this left side of the map. Suppose the first zone, you get unlucky, right? And the zone ends up on this right side of the map, right? Well, guess what? You don't have a lot of time, right? You got to leave around, the 1 minute mark or earlier because you got to trek all the way across here, right? With some vehicle or something. Like, planes aren't in the game anymore. You can't just teleport halfway across the map because planes used to be the option for mobility, but they don't exist anymore, right? Now, you don't really have a lot of time to farm for these mats, right? You really don't. The thing about Dusty is that Dusty Divot is right here, dead center of the map, right? It looks something like this. This is the divot, this is the crater, right? This gives you a whole bunch of time to farm because first circle is guaranteed to be like near you, even if it's all the way to the side of the map. This is why vending machines in Dusty is a lot better than vending machines somewhere on the edge of the map. You know what I mean? That makes sense because we're given a whole bunch of time to farm extra mats to really just buy what we want if we're given a really good vending machine. So that's the point I'm trying to make. We're getting ourselves set up for endgame right now, right? Early game is you clearing your point of interest if you're contested, right? Just so you can loot up. Sometimes you might want to leave, right? It's situational. You might loot half the point of interest and then leave, so you don't want to fight or something. It's all dependent on whether, you get third party, you don't have good loot, so you're not confident in the fight. You don't have shield, things like that, right? So you might want to leave your point of interest sometimes, but most of the time, it feels like you want to clear your point of interest so you can actually get all the loot in your point of interest. We noticed the vending machine. I find that it has an RPG. I take the RPG. Since we land a Dusty Divot, I have the time to buy a shotgun as well. We can get all these mats back easily, right? Easily. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit. In duos, me and Nets, right, my duo partner, we have dedicated roles, right, in the end game. My role is to build the tunnel and basically build the path for us, right? That's my role. Obviously, we can switch if needed, right? If it really comes down to it. But the main task that we have, we've already assigned beforehand, just so we don't have to communicate that. We can communicate about other things now, right? We don't have to be like, oh my god, I'll build. I have more mats, right? You should shoot. Like we don't need that time to discuss that because we've already established that beforehand. It's good to do that with your duo. And his job, his role, right, is to actually just take shots and protect us, right? He's going to have his AR or shotgun out at all times to take care of nearby threats, right? Because often when you're tunneling, right, you're tunneling or making a path, it's super hard to just keep track of everything around you, and someone can just sneak in and take shots at you, right? Like at your back, right? Like you're just not expecting it. But the point is, if Nets' role is to take shots and protect us because he's always gonna have his AR or pump out at all times, he can just take shots at other people and keep them away from us, right? He can be the threat that prevents other people from rushing us, right? That's gonna mitigate that effect of other people sneaking up behind us and taking shots, right? Even if they break through a roof, right? They have, when they break through a roof, they're gonna have their pickaxe out and they're gonna have to switch to their shotgun. Since Nets is not worried about building and is consistently just, holding his shotgun out, he's not going to have to worry about that whatsoever. Since we have those dedicated roles, even though I bought that gold pump, I trade it to him, right? I give him the gold pump because he's the one who's going to be taking shots in the end game. I'm cool with that. I completely give him the gold pump. You want to be playing as a team. It doesn't really matter what you as an individual perform in duos, you just want to be playing as a team. Can you, as a team, win the game? The number of kills that you have individually means nothing. Just understand that. Also, just make sure no one's inside. Let's talk about this. Why Dusty is actually really still good in Season 8, even though the removal of planes, right? Usually in Season 7, our routine, right? The routine that everyone that landed Dusty would do is farm Dusty, max mats loots, do everything you can in Dusty, and then when you rotate out, you zip line up to the plane on that mountain near Dusty. You take a plane, you fly around for 20 minutes, right? But now the planes are gone. So what's the move? We understand, again, pretend this is the map, right? The zone ends up in the top right corner of the map, right? So this is the new biome that ends up in Season 8. There's a bunch of geysers or whatever you want to call them, right? The things that you can take and it's basically acts like a launch pad, right? If this is Dusty Divot down here, right? There's a geyser down right here, right? That you could shoot up and you could chain into the rest of them. And you can basically rotate anywhere you want in this top right corner of the map, right? You can basically do that. You can just chain them, right? A lot of people know about this, but that's why Dusty Divot is so strong, because it gives you a mobility option if the circle ends up here, right? If the circle ends up here on this left side of the map, like tilted side, right? Tilted and Viking, there still is an option, right? Because there's one geyser here. You can use it to go to that broken house next to, you know, Loot Lake. So if this was Loot Lake up here, the broken house is right here, right? This actually has cannons now. So you land here, take cannons, and go anywhere you want in the circle, right? So Dusty still has solid mobility options. You know, he's got to take advantage of them. So our plan right now, right? We see the zone is so top right. We see this building right here, right? If we farm and take over this whole building, we're gonna be left with extra mats, right? This is really good because this gives us extra mats that we can use to rotate, right? It's sort of like a free rotation, and we're sort of breaking through the fact that we have a 500 mat cap, right? If you farm extra mats and take over a building and then replace it with your own thing, it's sort of like a huge turtle, right? But at the same time, you get extra mats that you can use to rotate. And still, after that rotation, after you tunnel that whole, you know, use all your extra mats, you still have 500 mats, right? So that's kind of cool. It's kind of like free mobility. So whenever you find an opportunity to do this, is just do it right away. This is really, really good because there's all these railings here that you can farm. There's the floors outside the perimeter. Pretty big base too, right? Metal too is really strong material. So we take over this whole thing, right? That's the plan. And we use all that extra. We end up like 700, 800, 1k mats extra, right? So we use that to rotate to the next zone that we find out later. And we find out the next zones, and this is where we're going to use the extra mats, right? So I just tunnel slowly all the way there, right? And then go pick up the mats again. See how I have 0 metal right now? But then I pick up the mats again, and now I'm max again, right? This is the extra mats strategy that you can use. Now, this isn't only in duos. You can use it in solos, but duos is a lot better just because you won't get shot, right? So whoever's building can be backed up by the person who's watching you. So you can tell you if someone's looking at you or if someone's looking to break your walls, and if someone is shooting at you, you can threaten them, right? You won't get triple team focused by a bunch of teams because your partner is watching out for you. Unfortunately, I don't pay enough attention. I actually take a couple shots here. The reason I asked him to drop a big pot here is because he actually has 3, and I had 2. So but I need to take one, right? So then it's gonna end up being, you know, he has 3 and I have 1, right? It's actually one of those skills that you need to know and do. You need to know what your partner's inventory is at all times, right? So you can make plays without missing, you know, information that you could have had. So we have zone here. So because we have zone, we actually build up one, just so we're not on that ground layer that everyone, you know, usually likes to play on. We build up 1. We could have built up 2 too. Not a huge difference. We try not to go too high because there is a team above us and we don't want to get too close to them, so we can avoid conflict, right? Because we got lucky with that zone, we don't actually have to use mats to get to that zone, right? We're already in there. So instead, we would use a little bit of mats just so we can, you know, be safer, right? We can afford that. I'm looking for kills here. Obviously, this is like an Atlantis scrim, but in Gauntlet, which is the current rank system right now, you want to be looking for kills at all times. Even if you're full shield, full mats, you can't even get the mats because, you know, mats in inventory doesn't exist. You still want to be looking for kills because, number one, it clears the game of people, right? So you have more control and you're more likely to win that game, right? It might not be significant, like that's significant, but you still want to be contributing to that, clearing the map of enemies, right? But number 2, you get a point per kill, so every kill matters. You definitely want to be looking for kills in Gauntlet mode. So right now, again, goes back to the fact that you have to understand what your dual partner's inventory is. I know my partner has a launch pad, right? Because I just keep track of his inventory of all time. And if I'm not sure, I just ask him, right? I just ask him, what do you have? What's your traps? What's your mats? What's your utility? What's your guns? Right? I just keep track of that. But usually, you won't have to ask that if you communicate well enough, because when your partner gets an important item like stinks, clingers, or launch pad or whatever, he usually calls it out. Right? If you have that dynamic between you and your duo, you won't have to ask ever. But if you're unsure and you're sitting in turtles, you're not doing anything like we are, you can just ask just to make sure, right? We're waiting to seal this mobility up top, right? I'm just looking at the people up top because I just want to see if they're going to use the launch pad. As soon as I see him place out a floor, just like this, right here, right? I understand he's about to place a launch pad. Looking for that opportunity. Unfortunately, this launch pad gets broken and I can't use it. Because of that, my partner just uses his own launch pad. We split up, we play for ourselves. I see this team here. I actually threatened them with the rocket, Because I know, let me pause this here. This is super important. I know that if I threaten them here, right? What's going to happen? If they have mobility, right? If they have mobility, they're going to end up using it because, number one, right? Number one, the storm's on their back, right? They don't really have time to heal, right? Number two, I understand it's a 1v2, but they don't know that, right? I'm waiting on this other side of this wall right here, where they're basically pinched against the storm and me, so, right? So they can't, I'm waiting. There's a threat, right? I'm providing the threat. This usually, right? The combination of this, I guess the storm is a threat too, right? The storm's on their back. I'm a threat, right? In the front. They don't really have an option. They can't heal either, right? They can't heal because there's not enough time. I just did 110, 120 damage to each of them because my rocket splash damage hit both of them there. And I understand that. So best case scenario, they're both 80 HP white, right? That's actually really easy to 1v2. That's not too difficult because I know how low they are. I have that knowledge too, right? That's an advantage of its own. So what I'm doing here, right? What I'm doing here is I'm just waiting because in duos, it's actually more likely that a team has mobility because there are 50 teams in duos, whereas in solos, there's 100 teams, right? Why is that significant? Because in duos, all the loot on the map is split 50 ways, right? It's divided in 50. If you assume that all the loot on the map is collected, obviously it's not, but that's just the best way we can calculate it. But in solos, it's split 100 ways, right? It's split 100 ways. And usually, obviously, like, people die and you collect mats from other people and collect mobility items from other people. But in duos, usually, there are more people alive. Just because you can camp in the same turtle and right next to each other, things like that, right? So, knowing that, I understand in duos, it's more likely that a team has mobility options, right? Right? I'm still moving away this way. You can see me walking, right? I'm still moving away because I can't assume that this team that I rocketed in this turtle has mobility. I can't guarantee it, right? There's no guarantee that they have it. I'm just being ready for the moment that they do because, right, it's a possibility. Because if I'm thinking about it, right, in my head, if I just have that idea in my head, as soon as I hear that rift noise or the launchpad noise, I can instantly turn around and I don't have to think about it twice. I'm just ready for the moment, right? But I'm still moving away because if they don't have launchpads or rifts, I'm still in a good position, right? Because if I just walk up to this turtle and wait for them to use it, and they don't have a mobility option, then guess what? The storm's going to come in. I'm going to be in the storm alongside them, right? And they're going to be looking to shoot me to get HP back or mats back or things like that. Or look for a mobility option because they're desperate, right? So I can't assume or guarantee that they have mobility. So let's see what happens here, right? We hear the rift noise. We instantly go back because we're thinking about the idea that they might have rifts. I got a rift. And I get the rift. Now, I'm good. This is a situation where I'm in the sky and my partner is alone down there 1v2 because we got split up, right? We made a mistake and we didn't communicate well enough. At this point in time, we have to just play for ourselves, right? Because he's under pressure. If I try to go and save him, I threaten my life as well and we might just throw the game. Unfortunately, in this case, Nets dies because a team rushed him. But it's super hard for him to do anything because it is a 1v2, right? So he gives me the information that they didn't collect his mats. Notice something here as well, guys. Notice something. I'm looking around on the map, right? I'm looking around, looking what fights look like, where people are. This is the circle, right? This is the circle. Now, where would you say, if you cut the circle in half, what does it look like most of the actions happening on? I understand there's a tree, but you'd still see turtles here, like, or something. This side looks extremely empty, right? This half of that circle looks extremely empty. There's so much action going around right here, right? So, there's no reason to land dead center, because then I'm too close to this action, right? I understand that this side is probably, I'm not entirely sure because of the trees, but it's probably more empty than this right side here. So that's what I do. I choose to land down here, right? Choose to land down here. Now, understand there's an option as well. There's a second option, right? If you cut this in quadrants, right? This circle in quadrants, there's a second option because this half is high ground, right? This has high ground, and the hill just dips down. It dips down, and there's low ground on this side, right? This is like the beach, and this is the hillside right here. So, knowing that I have to play on this left half of the circle, and this side is low ground, I choose the low ground option, right? Because the storm is moving this way, right? People are really scared to change elevations, right? They're really scared to go from either height to drop down on the ground, or the other way around, right? It's super hard to go from down on the ground up to height, right? When the zone moves into low ground, it's advantageous to play the low ground position. Because, number one, you're super vulnerable when, you know, you're changing height. Because it's super hard to build to protect yourself that way. Right? There's a lot of games where Vivid zone is originally on a mountain, but it moves down onto low ground, and Vivid immediately takes the priority to be on the low ground first, right? Just so it can shoot up at people that are coming down from the mountain, right? If he breaks the floor that someone's on and they don't react quickly enough, they take insane fall damage and they die, right? It's super advantageous to be first on that elevation change. That's why I choose this quarter of that circle. That's one reason, right? But I can't even play back here if I had an option to, right? Because the zone is actually over here. So it's actually cool that I did this. I wasn't actually thinking about this, I'll be honest, but this is actually the only option, really. Right? Because I can't even play back here. This is going to be covered by the storm in just a few seconds. So that's what I do, right? I understand the right side of the map, the right side of the circle is super occupied, and I play down here. Another note, right? I see this turtle here. I try to play underneath it, just so they can't shoot at me a little bit. I glide underneath it, so I don't get AR'd by them. They're not a threat. I don't glide right next to them or things like that. If you play underneath high ground, if someone's above you and you play directly underneath, it's super hard for them to shoot at you. They're covered by their own floors. It's hard to edit in the heat of the moment, and they have to know that you're there in the first place. If you play underneath them, it's super hard for them to see you at all, right? It's like a really steep angle. It's super awkward for this team in the brick tunnel up here, right, to shoot at me. Now, I know there's a team in there, so I build these stairs so they can't open a window and shoot at me. Notice that there's a launch pad. I try to take the launch pad. Unfortunately, small mistake. I'll take note of this in the future, right, because this is a mistake. If I didn't do this mistake, then I would have been able to take that launch pad very, very easily. Unfortunately, I mean, like, what is my mistake here, guys? This is the mistake. I placed a roof. I could have just turbo builded this floor here, right? I could have just turbo built this floor, and then as soon as they stop shooting, edit it in half. There's a hole here. There's a hole on this side right here, right? And I take the left half of the launch pad to jump out. That's what you can do, right? But the problem is I built that roof, right? And when you edit roofs, it doesn't entirely break. What I could have done, actually, if I have the roof here and I edit this square, and then this square, right? If I edit those three, this actually breaks if there's nothing else attached to it. But that's just too complex to think of at the moment. If I just turbo build the floor, I instantly have the option of editing and jumping around it right away. Because I built this roof, I actually lose the launch pad because I have to pickaxe it, but by that time the launch pad's gone. Because the team on height actually just took it out because they realize it's a threat to them, right? It makes sense. Reload my RPG because it's super good to have it reloaded at all times so you can use it when possible. See the option to kill this guy. He's a solo, right? Notice how in a solo duo situation, in order to clutch, you can't actually look for 1v2s. If you look for 1v2s, especially when people are experienced, you know, in a scrim game or in a rank game where you're super high points or whatever, people know what they're doing, and it's actually really hard to 1v2. This is not solo squads, guys. This is scrims, and in ranked or scrims, you can't really look for 1v2s because it's super hard to do, right? That's the one reason, because people know what they're doing. 1v2s are actually a lot harder than you think. But the reason number two is that in duos, if you actually kill someone, you don't get the benefit right away in endgame because things are super fast paced, and when people get knocked, you don't get the HP back, you don't get the mats, you don't get their loot, you don't get the mobility options that they were holding right away, right? It's super hard to res them because of the fact that circle's moving, but you have to wait, you know, that 10 seconds for Storm to kill them or things like that. That 50 HP gain is super hard to get in duos because they get knocked, you have to wait 10 seconds later, and by that time their partner's already on you and trying to kill you. That's why I look for opportunities to look for the 1v1s. The only kills I'm going for at the moment is the 1v1 situations, right? Because I'm not on height, right? I don't have safety at the moment. I can't go for 1v2s because if I aggro 1v2, then people are going to be looking to 2v1 me because they realize I'm a solo and they realize they have an advantage. Also notice things I said earlier, right? If someone has height, if you play directly underneath them and not off to the side, like bird's eye view, circle, right? Circle, okay? Let's just assume that high ground is right here, right? This is their tarp that they have on high ground, right? If I play right here, say I'm mid ground or low ground, right? If I play right here, they have like a 45-degree angle to shoot down at me. That's super easy to actually hit me, right? But if I choose to play right underneath them, right? This is good for two reasons. Number one, it's actually hard for them to even see me, right? They're going to be usually building out of brick or metal, and it's super hard to see through that material. They won't even see me, right? So I'm actually, I'm actually less visible to the people on high ground. And usually in scrims, one of the biggest threats is the people on high ground because they have the time to shoot because they're not being threatened by anything else, right? So there's less visibility, right? But number two, they don't even have the option to shoot you. They can't, right? Because the angle is too steep. They can't look down that far. They can't shoot, right? The only way they do shoot is if they edit, but when Storm is moving, it's super hard to look for edits and to actually shoot that quickly, right? And sometimes they don't want to even risk that, right? If there's options over here, they'd rather shoot at this option rather than going for that complex edit and looking down at you, especially when they're placing roofs too, right? So that's why I'm exactly playing directly underneath the high ground. I'm keeping in mind of this, right? Instead of rushing that guy that I just RPG'd and being exposed to high ground, I forget about it, right? I understand he's a solo, but I realize it's more important to maintain my safety. My safety is a priority. If I can look for kills without risking my safety, that's cool, and I can do that. But if I actually go for this kill, I'm risking my safety because the people on high ground can actually shoot me. That's why I stay here. I don't actually push him. I hit him with an RPG, yes, 120 damage. Super low. Usually you push people when they're white, but I choose not to do that. Now, I take note of the fact that, you know, circle is actually going downhill again. Remember what I said before? If the circle's changing elevation, if you're the first one on the new elevation, whether it's low ground or high ground, you actually have the better position. I prioritize changing elevation before everyone else does, so I can actually be safe, number one, and number two, I can look for opportunities to kill people that are coming down as well. Now, I don't go on low ground, ultimate low ground. I'll explain why. I don't go on the very, very low ground. I stay on the second layer from the ground. The reason for this is because the people without mats are down there. And guess what the people without mats are, dude? They're desperate. They're desperate for kills, right? They're bloodthirsty because they want mats, they want HP. They're in a very desperate situation. They're usually going to put themselves in terrible situations just to look for kills because, you know, they have no other option. They have to do that if they want to make a comeback into this game. Knowing that, right? I avoid the ultimate low ground because those people are basically going to do anything they can to kill you, right? They just don't have an option. So I play on the second layer from the ground, maybe third, right? Little difference from that. I see a launch pad through this wood, actually, right? So I play next to it because I can use it to retake height here. I notice there's a fight going on at height, and they just drop down. They're probably low, maybe, so I go for a height here. One of these people actually gets shot and dies. That's the perfect timing for me, actually, right? Let me explain something as well. The timing of when you want to go at height is very specific. Let's say this is when you want to go for height. They're fighting, okay? The team on ultimate high is fighting. This means they're preoccupied, right? They're shooting, they're making a lot of noise, they're taking damage, they're worried about other things. They're not worried about you landing on them because they have a different thing to worry about, right? Number two, this is why I drew the circle. Suppose the storm is going this way, okay? If they're right here, if they're really far away from the center of the circle, or like they have to build, right? They can't get hit by the storm. They're gonna have to build. If you time your glide and landing in here, at this point in time, it's super good. If they're already you know, extended all the way out here with their tarp, if you try to land on them now, they don't have to build, right? They're not being pressured by the storm, and they're most likely gonna look to shoot you while you try to land on them if they're this far extended out, right? You know, it depends on how extended are they, right? Out into the circle, into the safe zone. Number three, this isn't really a reason, but this tip right here is more of a better way to take high ground, right? Sometimes, and Cease does this a lot, 72 hours does this a lot, you actually want to dip into storm for 1 or 2 ticks just because, you know, that 10 HP, 20 HP is worth a lot, but you know, the storm it's super hard to look out into the storm, right? If someone's out here, you'll notice it's actually really, really hard to see him. So if you swoop in like this, right? Swoop in like this, go into storm for just a second. Let me redraw the circle a little bit. So if you swoop in, right? You come in, you take the launch pad right here. This is basically what I did. You swoop in a little bit, go into storm for 1 or 2 seconds. And I realized this, right? Like, I didn't do this in this game, but I actually should have, because 10 HP doesn't matter as much as, you know, the AR shots that I could be taking from them. Because if I swoop into storm, I actually avoid 2 to 3 to 4 AR shots that they could have done, which adds up to 90 to 120 damage. So would I rather take 10 or 20 damage, or all the air shots they could be shooting at me, right? So I take this, you know, take this damage. They can't see me. It's super hard for them to hit me, and then I swoop back in as soon as I land on them, and then pump them. That's the play, right? These are tactics that pro players are doing, and it's been helping them. So now I've height, right? With an RPG, RPG is the best thing when you have height. But also notice, let me go back a little bit. Something that your partner can do, your partner's not out of the game yet. He can actually help you, you know, call out your mats, call out your seal situation, but he can, you know, give you call outs on certain things that he sees because he's not playing the game. You know, his brain is not preoccupied with playing the game like you are. You have to worry about building mechanically, you know, taking shots. So when your partner is dead, he can actually help you out, giving your mat call outs, giving, you know, how much shield you have left, what's your HP at, you know, if you're forgetting to do something because sometimes you don't play perfectly, he can just quickly remind you. Obviously, you got to be speaking the whole time because you still need to be listening, you know, and you need those audio cues in game like footsteps, like RPG shots, like launch pads, like rift to goes. You still need to hear stuff. So, but periodically, he can actually just give you callouts and remind you of things that you might be missing out on. And this is exactly what my duo partner is doing. Nets is calling out mats for the past like minute. He's been telling me how many mats I've had, you know, am I running out, am I low? Because as I'm building, it's super hard to just continuously be looking down here, right? I should be looking down here, right? And just continuously looking, but like, I'm human, right? I might forget. I'm not perfect player yet. He told me to use my RPG, which I completely forgot, I'll admit. I honestly forgot I even had an RPG. For just a split second, but maybe later I would have remembered, but he reminds me, right? Unfortunately, I take a little bit of damage, but again, my partner gives the call out, take the shield. Because I have the time, he's watching the map, he's watching where the storm is, and just taking in a lot of more info that I would have missed otherwise. I have height here, I don't need to do anything. Guys, let's go back for just a little bit here. Look at this number. This number is super, super important. Continuously look at this number throughout the end game. There's 4 people left. So now it's either, so this is me, right? So it's either, you know, let's just draw out the 4 people, honestly. I quickly just take note of this combination right here. It's either, you know, we're all solos, right? We're all solos. We're all individual teams. Or individual teams, right? Or there's a duo, and then there's a solo, and then there's me, right? Either way, whichever the combination is, I realize I have height, and I can just wait for the third party. The thing that could happen with this case, with the case that, you know, there's a duo, and this would be actually really bad for me, is if these 2 guys, the duo, actually end up killing the solo, right? If they kill the solo, then I'm in a 1v2 situation, and this is really bad for me, right? Even if I have height. Obviously, it's not as bad as a 1v2 usually is, because I do have height, but it's still bad. I don't want this, right? This is why, you can actually see my eyes, I'm looking down here, right? Because if I see knocked, this is actually a small tip, but it's super useful. I need this info. I'm actually just looking at the kill feed right now. If I see knocked, right? That means it's a 1v1 left, right? The duo has lost a teammate, right? It's super, super important to realize, you know, what's happening on the kill feed. I can get information from there too. If I see this, the duo has lost a teammate, it's a 1v1v1. And in this case, when circle is this small, you do not have time for a 10-second revive. Knock just basically means dead, but knock tells me that the duo has died, right? If I see eliminated, right? This could mean one of 2 things, right? This could mean that, you know, there was never a duo in the first place, but then one of the 3 solos died, right? Or it means the duo killed the solo and it's over. How do I differentiate between those 2 cases? Well, I just wait for further shots. After I see this first eliminated, I just wait. You know, are they shooting? Are they building? Are they sticking together? I can see through some of these builds, right? If they're standing right next to each other, obviously I know they're a duo. But if they're like, you know, one guy's over here in the top 3 I'm talking about, one guy's over here, then and they're just like tunneling together and walling each other off, that's a hint that it's a 1v1v1. But if they're right next to each other, I know it's a 1v2. VOD reviewing helps you do this, right? But you would have never thought of this if you never did the VOD review in the first place, right? So I'm praying, right? I'm just like, oh my god, dude, please let one of these duo guys die, right? I need the duo guys to die. That's why I'm looking down here. I'm waiting for that knocked or eliminated, right? If I see knocked, I understand what's going on. Guess what? Now, it's terrible quality, so you won't see it, but we do see knocked out. We see knocked out right here. This means it's a 1v1. I don't need to see whether he got full killed or not, because I know he's not going to be revived. It's impossible. I understand it's a 1v1v1, right? Top 3, no way there's a duo in the game. Impossible.
Hit it.
No. My duo told me to shoot a RPG right here, but the wall is actually blocked off, so I can't get the splash damage on him. It was a good call out for sure, though. Campfiring, right? This guy's campfiring. It's not guaranteed, but usually when people are campfiring, they're kind of low, right? Too scared of the... So again, I'm watching kill feed. I see that the person dies. 1v1. I can either watch the kill feed or I can watch this. 2 for 2, man. Right? Knowing it's a 1v1, I third party it because it's most likely the fact that, he's low. Third party it, get the rocket in, finish the game. Obviously, my partner was actually a huge part in this. Cues on what to do, my mat count, things I would have never taken in otherwise. Let's talk about the reasons how I clutched this game. Number 1, I stayed calm, right? It's cool to have, you know, adrenaline running through your running through your system, because it is an intense situation. But it's super important to remain calm, because if you are really, really excited or really, really nervous, it's super tough to actually make, you know, rational thoughts with logic, and you'll end up making really stupid decisions if you're too excited. If you're too excited, you might just aggro and just WQ people, because, you know, that's what people tend to do when they're excited. They just want to fight, you know what I mean? But if you stay calm, you'll think, and you'll actually make the correct decision most of the time, right? So this is super important. This is probably the most important tip out of everything here, right? Number 2, in a solo duo game, it's usually a 1v2 situation. Usually, not always. There are solos running around on the map, but usually in 1v2 situations, this means I need to, you know, play for myself. Play for safety more so than kills, because in the 1v2 situation, as I explained before, if you do pick off one of these people, you're not going to get the rewards after like maybe 10-15 seconds, because you have to full kill them, right? You have to actually eliminate them, not knock them, eliminate them to actually get the 50 HP and the 150 mats, right? So I play for myself, and look to prioritize rotations over kills more than anything, right? Because I need to be safe, right? I can't take this option. Where I do find solos, I can look for that kill, because I know they're going to be eliminated. But even if I do see a solo, there is a chance that their duo just split up with them, and they just lost each other during, you know, the chaos. But there's no guarantee that they are a solo at that point in time. But number 3, right, especially if you're in a duo game, right, because that's where you need to clutch if your partner dies. Make sure your partner is helping you out. Make sure your partner didn't just go down the kitchen and get dinner, because that's just you're losing out on a very, very valuable resource here. Your partner can actually give you directions on what's going on, because he's not playing the game. He's not worried about building. He's not worried about shooting. He's not worried about rotating. 100% of his brain is focused on, you know, things that you wouldn't be seeing otherwise. Your mats, your HP. Sometimes you actually don't even realize what HP you're at. You know, options you have in your inventory. That time when I took 76 damage, right? He understood, because he looked at the map. He saw where the storm was, right? He looked at the map, saw where the storm was. He understood I had enough time to take a big pot, which obviously takes 5 seconds. He understood I had that time. That's actually kind of a complex thing to, you know, to figure out very, very quickly, especially if I'm playing the game myself. I can't just look up the map, oh, realize I have a 50 pot, look up the map again, see if I have time while building, while shooting. That's a lot of things to take in, man. So my partner is not occupied right now with, you know, with all that complex stuff, so he can actually tell me things like that, right? He understands I have enough time to take this big pot. He tells me to do so, and I actually just gain 50 HP from that. All those things in combination, if you do that, you can actually have a really good chance of clutching the game out when you're, you know, you're not in the best position, or your partner dies, or if you don't have mats, or things like that, right? So shout out my partner. He actually gave me a huge boost, not only in confidence, but in information, right? Because he's telling me things I would have missed otherwise. But guys, thank you so much for watching. That's been episode 9 of Inside the Mind of Zykoma. I will see you all next time. Hope you guys learned a lot from this episode. See ya.